Hi, I'm so glad that you decided to participate in Circles of Faith this Lent. A couple of things I wanted to point out about the Gospel of Mark. First, it's the first Gospel ever written. And secondly, there's the theme of suffering. So as you go along in your reading, keep these two things in mind. Mark, when he wrote his Gospel, had an oral tradition to rely on, and he also had some snippets of writing about Jesus and Jesus's passion and the miracle stories. So he put those together in a new way that was called the Gospel. And he decided to put this to writing perhaps because some of the eyewitnesses were passing away. Peter and Paul were both martyred in Rome at around 60 AD, middle of 60s AD. And Mark wrote his Gospel in AD 70. So his motivation as a writer is something to keep in mind. And he wrote to a Gentile community who was suffering persecution. Nero really began a vigorous and violent persecution of Christians in the mid-60s. And Mark was writing to a community who was suffering. He emphasizes Jesus as a suffering Messiah, and he tells us that we have to take up our cross in order to be authentic disciples. This means something to us, of course, personally, as we make meaning out of the small, tiny personal crosses that we bear in our life. But you know, it also makes sense to us from a global perspective now, especially with the beheading of 21 Christians recently at the hands of ISIS. It brings persecution for the faith really into our current situation, much like the readers of Mark's Gospel would have been experiencing. So look out for this theme of suffering as you read. You know, I encourage you to prepare well for your sessions. The more time you put in to preparing your thoughts and in response to each question, the more fruit this program will bear for you. I already hear some really great things coming from the groups about conversations that you've had so far. And studying Scripture really has a lot of meaning for us and can bring great fruit to our lives. As the U.S. bishops said in one of their recent documents called Go Make Disciples, they say that when the story of Jesus is truly our story, when we have caught his fire, when his good news shapes our lives, individually as families and as a church, his influence will be felt far beyond our church. So it's a great thing that you're doing personally, but it's also affecting the community. May God bless you and your family.